Ladies and gentlemen, hearts go pitter-patter while innocent victims go splitter-splatter in this punch-drunk, heart-wrung romantic ruckus. In this corner, the Sultan of Scare, Friday the 13th, the series, and the challenger with its head in the air, the adventures of Pete and Pete. This Valentine's Day, eat your heart out and put up your spooks!
This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite horror, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff, repping the 80s.
I'm Ryan, repping the 90s. This week's theme:
Valentine's Day Massacre. Happy Valentine's Day, Ryan.
Your Valentine's is in the mail.
Is this the first time we've covered Valentine's Day on the podcast?
I think so. However, I do remember discussing my episode with you.
At one point previously, we were doing a Pete and Pete, and you mentioned other characters in the show that I hadn't seen, and you talked about Openface, and then I was like, oh yeah, Openface. I saw it in that one intro.
Okay.
I am glad that we're finally getting into Valentine's Day. We're kicking over some of the other lesser used holidays, and as always, there is a potential for horror. I can't think of a better way to explore that than with Friday the 13th, this series, Season 1, Episode 3, Cupid's Quiver. We start in a murky bar. 3 frat bros are doing shots in the corner. A man and a woman sit at a table and flirt. Nearby, a scumbag puts a giant burlap sack on the bar, spits into his hand, slicks back his hair, and then stumbles over.
Yep.
He slobbers on the woman and asks her to dance. She explains in no uncertain terms that she does not want to dance with him, and then walks away with her fella. The scumbag returns to the bar and unwraps his burlap bundle, revealing a creepy 3-foot-tall statue of Cupid. The Cupid comes to life and shoots a magic arrow at the woman. He propositions her again, and this time she's ready to head to the nearest motel. The scumbag grabs the Cupid and they make haste. The Cupid watches from a dresser as they have sex. After, the woman declares that she loves him. The scumbag wraps his hands around her throat and begins to throttle her. Her cries do not go unheard, however. The hotel manager and the drunken frat bros burst through the door to separate them. One of the bros sees the creepy Cupid statue and just has to have it. The next day, at Curious Goods, purveyor of fine cursed objects, ravishing redhead Mickey reads an article about the crime, in which the scumbag is quoted as saying he had to kill for Cupid. This reminds her of a certain cursed Cupid statue.
Jack, what do you remember about that Cupid in Uncle Lewis's manifest?
The Cupid of Malek. That was commissioned by one Salam Malek in 1453. It was said that Malek was so ugly that no woman could look at him without turning away. That got him pretty upset. So he vowed vengeance on all those who denied him love. He had the Cupid cast in his own image.
The man arrested for the brutal honeymoon suite slaying said he had to kill for Cupid's sake.
Mickey and Man of Action Ryan go to the motel. The manager tells them that the frat bros stole the statue, so they head to the college to investigate. On campus, Eddie, a creepy incel, is hiding in a tree, taking photos of a co-ed named Lori. He chases her down and demands another date, refusing to admit that there was no first date. She threatens to report him, which carries extra weight because he's one strike away from being kicked out of school. He starts to get rough with her, but just then, Mickey and Ryan show up, looking for the fraternity. Lori breaks away from Eddie to show them the way. As it happens, Eddie is also an unpaid janitor for the fraternity. It's very convenient for the plot. He drives over there and asks if he can attend their Valentine's Day party, but the Richie Riches shut him down. Eddie immediately finds the Cupid statue and steals it when someone mentions that the statue helps you get chicks. Mickey and Ryan can't get any answers from the frat bros. They even question Eddie, but there's no way he's going to give up the chick-getting statue now. Plan B. Mickey and Ryan will come back later that night for the Valentine's Day party, along with white-bearded scholar Jack, who will show up as a freelance bartender with a blender full of sodium pentothal, aka True Serum.
Okay, so this isn't evil Uncle What's-His-Nuts.
No, it's not evil Uncle Lewis. This is white-bearded scholar Jack, who is helping to hunt down all of the cursed relics.
But who knows how to make sodium pentothal in the ancient Scottish style.
I gotta hand it to you, Pop. You make the best drinks in the world.
Well, thank you. Let me ask you something. You strike me as the kind of man who's alert and aware of everything that's going on around him that's of any importance. Have you seen a statue of a Cupid?
Meanwhile, Eddie is in his dank boiler room, where he spends his time cutting up photos of Lori, weeping and cackling like a maniac.
This guy was from The Mask, by the way. Did you recognize one of the henchmen?
No, I did
He's
not.
the guy who's like, Romeo, this whole place is gonna blow.
I was going to look up his credits. I actually pulled him up because I was like, yeah, I bet this guy's been in a ton of stuff because, boy, he got a face for creeping.
I was shocked that he did anything else besides The Mask.
Back at the party, Plan B is working like a charm. They find out that Eddie must have taken the Cupid statue from the house. Eddie goes to that same murky bar, plops down the Cupid, and starts harassing the first woman he sees. The Cupid statue shoots a magic arrow into her face at point-blank range, and Eddie whisks her away in his rusty truck. They park in the woods and have sex. After, she tells Eddie she loves him. You might think that Eddie, the incel, would want to savor these moments, but instead, he hands her a bottle of honey and excuses himself to take a leak. He comes back with a huge beehive, throws it in the cab of the truck, and locks the woman inside. The bees, which are famously driven mad by the scent of honey, painfully sting her to death, while Eddie watches through the window with glee. Eddie drives back to campus in his truck full of bees, locates Lori, and uses the cursed Cupid to put the whammy on her. Mickey and Ryan are close on his heels. Ryan chases Eddie to the boiler room, fetches him a clout with a pipe, and retrieves the Cupid. Before they can leave, the useless campus cop shows up to take back this stolen statue that's got everyone all riled up. Mickey and Ryan say they'll be back in the morning with receipts and escort the ensorcelled Lori off of school grounds. I thought it was funny that the campus cop was like, well, where do you think you're going with that creepy statue? But they abduct a student who doesn't want to leave because she's under the spell. And yeah, if you want to drag that woman off of campus, you two strangers that don't go to the school.
Well, he is the worst school security guard ever, because he's like, what are you doing up in that tree taking photos? And the guy's like, hey, just bird watching. And he's like, okay, carry on.
No, worse. He's like, I'm a fan of bird watching myself. Yeah. This campus cop is the worst, which is to say he is like all campus cops. Back at Curious Goods, our heroes leave the smitten Lori alone with the telephone. She promptly calls up the boiler room, and Eddie tells her,
come to Butthead. Come a little closer.
Lori arrives at the boiler room, but surprise, it's really Mickey in a crazy wig. They overheard the phone call and set a trap. Unfortunately, Mickey is a chick, and the cursed Cupid helps get chicks. Eddie aims the statue, its cooldown period ends, and it blasts the beam of love through Mickey's spine. Ryan charges in to save her, but she fights him off because now she's in love with Eddie.
No! Don't hurt him! Mickey, get away from him! I love him!
Hear that? Now why don't you be a good fella and just run along and let the little lady and I have some fun?
Based on our previous episodes where Mickey fell under the spell of the time-traveling Dracula and the episode where she fell in love with the Marquis de Sade, you can see this is a recurring pattern, and I'm really shocked that she didn't fall in love with that psycho witch who had the voodoo scarecrow.
Or the scarecrow.
Ryan and Eddie literally swashbuckle their way through the steaming pipes of the boiler room. It's pretty fun. Eddie's swinging an axe around, Ryan's swinging on chains, but Eddie's no man of action, and he is unfit for swashbuckling. He plummets several stories, crashes through a table, and dies. Back at Curious Goods, they put the Cupid in the sealed vault and say goodbye to Lori, who has no memory of what has transpired. Ryan shamelessly tries to take her out for sushi, but her boyfriend shows up to bring her home. This is not a good look for Ryan, and to make matters worse, he wonders aloud if he should take the cursed Cupid out of the vault to shoot her with the beam of love.
No, just poke her with the tip of the arrow. So not the full dose.
Well, Jack says don't even fucking joke about that. And then, even though Mickey is his cousin and she's engaged, he tries to get her out on a date. It's pretty foul. The end.
Well, the guy's hard up, you know? He's doing all this cursed object gathering. He's gotta blow off steam somehow.
Yeah, it's only the 3rd episode, but I was like, oh my god, Ryan, chill.
My namesake. Feels to me like these dudes are all just assuming they need to make sacrifices to the Cupid.
At no point does anyone do like a lore drop, like this is how the cursed item works.
Yeah.
I think there's just an understood component to the show that when you get possession of one of these cursed objects, because they trade hands so frequently, that the person
just gains
intuitively figures out how they work.
I think they could have made the statue a little more appealing. It was pretty ugly.
An interesting part of lore is that the Cupid was commissioned by this man who was so ugly that no woman would have him. And so to get his revenge, he commissioned this demonic statue, and he wanted it to have his face. So that's why the Cupid is so ugly.
Did I miss that part too?
You did.
Boy, is my face red with boils and sores.
So Eddie's driving around with this truck full of bees, and later he's got like bee stings on his face. And it's like, did you think you were just going to roll down the window and the bees were going to leave? Like,
the funniest part was that his first instinct immediately was to go find a beehive. Maybe he knew where it was already.
He must have, because he picked the woman up at the bar and he's like, I know exactly where I'm going to take you. I'm going to take you 5 feet away from this tree where I can wedge the door shut, and I'll bring a bottle of honey to give us energy, and then I'll go get the beehive. But like, he was a photograph taking stalker who lived in a boiler room and worked as an unpaid janitor for a douchey fraternity. Nowhere in that do you get like beekeeper. So it was very funny that later on he just had like bee stings all over his face. And it was kind of like Chris Elliott in Something About Mary, who's like getting gradually more grotesque as the movie goes on. What are bees but tiny little cupids when you think about it?
With their butt arrows. Cupid is always shooting people in the butt.
That's right.
And they are using their butts to shoot
to make honey
in your butt. They don't use their butts to make honey.
No.
Jeez. I was going to call him an atheist earlier, and then I was going to do a callback to it just now, but because I didn't do it earlier, I can't do the callback. And I don't think atheist is a word either.
It
sounds
might
good, though.
be.
He's the rapiest atheist.
He's the rapiest atheist, exactly.
Okay, I'm using all of this.
Oh dear. All right, how about some lighter fare?
This is kind of a cheat. It's Pete and Pete, the Valentine's Day Massacre.
Horror, there is none. Although, when you pitched this episode, you did say there was a body count, which is pretty rare for Pete and Pete. I was intrigued.
Where did your imagination take you when I mentioned the body count?
I assumed there was a third Pete who was brutally killed.
It's true, but it was an accident, I swear.
Well, we find out right off the bat. Big Pete is practicing the discus like a dutiful son because his dad always dreamed of being an Olympic discus thrower. Unfortunately, his very first throw goes awry, goes astray, goes something.
Askew?
Goes askew. And lands in the bucket containing the school's mascot, Edna, the fighting squid. And she is destroyed. Destroyed entirely.
Body count, 1.
Ellen wants to tell Mr. Beverly, the school groundskeeper, but
I had a much better idea. Let's bury it!
On the 50-yard line of the football field, where all mascots should be buried. They make a pact never to tell the secret to anybody.
What if they dip you in acid? I'll never tell Pete no matter what, even if they lower me inch by inch into the molten lava of a live volcano.
But Big Pete falls in love, this being Valentine's Day, with his math teacher, Miss Fingerwood, whose full name, by the way, is
Elma Cooter Fingerwood.
It's just no qualms about that from the staff. It is hinted that because of this unrequited love, the secret may be in danger. Doubly unfortunately, Mr. Beverly also is in love with Miss Elma Cooter Fingerwood, and so I don't know. There's a terrible triangle afoot, awry, askew. By the way, this is the first special for Pete and Pete before it became a regular series. So there's no Endless Mike yet. There's no Pit Stain.
So we meet a cast of colorful bullies, including
Milk Mustache, Ink Stain, whose pen always exploded, Audi, who they say has an Audi belly button 3 inches long, Open Face, Gravy Breath, and Butt Stripe. This kid who always has mud on his butt from riding his bike in the rain.
Hi, guys.
Gravy Breath, you.
This is a much more primitive version of Pete and Pete. It doesn't have the fully produced opening credits with the cool theme song. And
Right. I found a cool Air Master on YouTube, and it really shows me the importance of Hey Sandy for kicking off the adventure after the teaser.
But as our show's resident Pete and Pete expert, were these just one-offs? Was it a pilot season that the guys sold to Nickelodeon?
The creators of Pete and Pete worked in the on-air promo department at Nickelodeon, and they were doing 60-second Pete and Pete shorts just as interstitials between programming. Eventually, they were so popular that they got 4 half-hour specials, and then those were so popular that they got a full series order. So they went from on-air promo marketing guys to showrunners.
Wow, this really clicks even tighter with how obsessed and or destined and or neurotically bound you are with Pete and Pete, because listeners, Ryan has worked in on-air promo off and on for quite some time.
When I met Will McCrobb, one of the co-creators of Pete and Pete, I was like, I also work in on-air promo. Unfortunately, they're not giving me any interstitials to make. Every time I try, I get shot down. Times were different in the 90s and maybe even late 80s. The first Pete and Pete shorts might have been like very late 80s.
So is it possible that I could claim totally 80s for Pete and Pete?
If we ever cover the shorts. Speaking of Open Face is the main bully in this episode, Pete's rival.
An evil kid who always eats open face sandwiches, even in church.
Who has had it in for Pete ever since Pete stopped him from electrocuting a chihuahua. Openface knows Pete has a crush on Miss Fingerwood and wants to destroy him. Openface goes to Mr. Beverly and says, I will stop Pete from slobbering all over Miss Fingerwood if you give me the squid, because at this point nobody knows the squid is dead. Openface lies and says he'll set Edna the squid free, but really he just wants to use its power to rule the school.
It is kind of Lovecraftian how Openface wants to set himself up as the figurehead of a squid worshipping cult for power and influence.
In maths class, Pete is still slobbering over Miss Fingerwood. Unfortunately, Miss Fingerwood still thinks Pete's name is Whizzer. He uses this incredible word problem to declare his love for her.
If 1 is the loneliest number, then x plus 1 over the circumference of a full moon equals the square root of eternity. Us eating donuts together beneath a willow tree.
It's beautiful, but she doesn't get it. She's just trying to figure out the maths. Ellen is like, what the F? Openface confronts the Petes on the road, and the whole bully gang is there.
I like that Milk Mustache wears a balaclava.
He's like a little gremlin, kind of.
Yeah, and so his whole face is covered except for his milk mustache, which I don't know if it's commitment to the bit or just an unfortunate deformity, but chef's kiss.
Another milk episode. Like, he was really drinking it, so it must have been real milk, and so that balaclava must have been just awful by the end of...
Soaked in awful, crusty milk, yeah.
So this is the famous moment that Jeff knew of, where he's like, don't slobber over Miss Fingerwood, and Pete's like, why? And he says, here's why, and he slugs him right in the face. And Pete is still like, piss off, loser, and so the beating just continues. Later, Pete, all beat up and bandaged, goes to Ellen for advice. This is like kind of a really incredible moment. She's like, let me tell you what I think. And she smashes the invisible body model that they built together. He's like, I really need your help this time. And she's like, I'm sorry, Pete, not this time. And she actually says, I don't think we can be friends anymore. And she walks away, leaving Pete heartbroken and confused and will be gone.
It's so interesting and frustrating because even before the show has really officially kicked off, Pete and Ellen have this dynamic where they're friends,
won't they?
Where they don't know if they're going to be more than friends. But we see this play out all the way to the time tunnel episode.
She'd always be a girl and a friend, but not a girlfriend.
It's unfair for them to be in a platonic relationship and still have her be so jealous of this other romantic angle. But then we will see that perhaps it's not so platonic after all.
Back in class, they're up on the roof of the school, dressed as the sun and the solar system, trying to calculate the rotation ratio of the solar system.
It really is bullshit when you zoom out, because he treats her as a platonic friend and then she gets mad But then he asks her out on a date, and then she's like, I'm not interested in you like that.
That's not true. She drops the pencil out of her toes, and she's like flabbergasted.
A real date?
Then he puts her in the cocoon of love, and she doesn't go for it.
Well, I mean, hell.
Humidity wasn't high enough?
Yeah, that's it. Miss Fingerwood notices Pete's mangled face. She's like, oh, you poor sweet dear. And she puts her hand delicately on his bandage. And Openface is like, uh-oh. And Mr. Beverly is spying on them with a spyglass from way downtown. And he starts freaking out, talking to himself, wandering the town, painting wobbly lines on the street. Openface decides he's going to need to up the ante and dig up some dirt on Pete so that he can blackmail him. They grab Little Pete and try to make him talk by drawing a goatee on Petunia, Pete's arm tattoo. But he doesn't crack. He's way too tough. So then the next plan is to seduce Ellen, and it's pretty good. He's doing a good job, I'm not going to lie. He's got a little poet in his soul, too.
I like that Openface, as strange and as gimmicky as he is, carrying his disgusting Openface sandwiches around everywhere, he's such a multifaceted bully. He has like so many moves that if torture and intimidation don't work, he will default into loverboy mode to seduce Pete's friend to try to weasel secrets out of her by offering horrible secrets of his own. It's very dark and psychological, and I applaud Pete and Pete once again.
So he does get a date with Ellen to go fly kites in the park while eating open-faced liver and gravy sandwiches.
And it looks to be about 20 below with wind chill factor.
Freezing cold episode. Lots of nice shots of sunsets, though. Pete is in the classroom with Miss Fingerwood. They're alone together, and he's kind of figuring out that they have nothing in common. And Ellen, out on the field flying kites, is also realizing the same thing about Open-Face. He's talking about a lot of weird stuff, and does tell her his deep, dark secret about throwing his own uncle out of a plane. It all ends with Open-Face being like, now you have to tell me your deep, dark secret, Ellen, if you like me. And she's like, wow. So that night, Pete has a crazy dream about everyone dressed like sheep and doing math problems and such. And then Open-Face wakes him up by throwing what looks to be a fluffernutter through his window, sticking a note to the bed with it. Fluffernutter is an open-face sandwich I can get behind.
Always on theme.
The note is like, meet me on the football field.
I know your secret, you filthy suck.
So they all meet on the football field. Miss Fingerwood is there. Mr. Beverly is there. Open-face is just laying into Pete. He's like, I know your secret. I'll tell everybody. Ellen told me. Stay away from Miss Fingerwood. Ellen ruined you. She betrayed you. And then little Pete calls Ellen on the walkie-talkie, and he's like, Open-face knows the secret. You didn't tell him, did you? And then she hops on her bike and she's pedaling for all she's worth towards the football field, and she's like, no. And then he's like, I'm gonna give you to the count of 5. And they start counting down, and they're like 5, and Pete's like 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then Miss Fingerwood goes 2.5. Finally Pete's like, you can't tell the secret, Open-Face, because I'm gonna tell it. I killed your squid. It was an accident. I hit it with the discus.
What was the impact velocity?
Again, always on brand. Ellen runs up and she's like, I didn't tell the secret. And he's so happy because he's not betrayed. Mr. Beverly forgives Pete. Open-Face is like, we had a deal, Mr. Beverly. I give you Miss Fingerwood and you give me the squid. And then Miss Fingerwood's like, hubba hubba. And then Mr. Beverly's like, fuck off, dude. Miss Fingerwood, come with me. And then Open-Face is like, no, I am Open-Face. But he's defeated because nobody gives a shit, really. They don't even punch him or nothing. So Mr. Beverly shows Miss Fingerwood his Valentine, a geometrically perfect heart he has painted on the field. Even though if you look at it carefully, it's really not geometrically perfect, but I'll give it to them. And then Pete and Ellen wander through the heart, and he gives her his Valentine, and they promise many more future secrets. The end.
Another great episode, even in its most primitive form.
I mean, honor promo, guys. We can tell a perfect story, first try out.
You really are like that third Pete that was brutally killed off screen.
That's how it feels in my heart. I'm a squid floating lifeless in a bucket.
I felt kind of bad for Edna to be
living in a bucket. She probably got the best fate, really. I mean, what kind of life is that?
Edna is with us all now, Open-Face. No, she's not. She's 6 feet underground, decomposing.
Body count for Pete and Pete, 1 fighting squid.
Yep.
Body count for Friday the 13th, 2 humans. And I will say, most of those bees that stung that poor lady probably lost their stingers and died horribly.
Oh, yeah.
Gross factor. For my episode, I'm going to say Eddie was very gross. Gross factor for Pete and Pete. I mean, you had open-face sandwiches for days.
Open-face,
you had butt stripes.
Audi, who has an Audi belly button 3 inches long, which is so disgusting.
What the factor from my episode, I would say the 2 things that stuck out to me were people carrying around a 3-foot statue everywhere like it was normal.
Nobody batting an eye about it.
And then Jack showing up as a volunteer bartender to a fraternity party with a blender full of truth serum. What the factor for Pete and Pete?
It's like purposeful what the factor, which I don't think counts.
It doesn't, because it doesn't bump you.
Yeah.
It's just delightful. Totally 80s for my episode. I was going to say negative points. For an 80s episode, it is very unusual, almost unheard of, to have an incel character who is, from the jump, unsympathetic and who obviously hates women.
Yeah.
But Ryan cancels that out by being a weird horn dog at the end and like hitting on every woman in sight, including his cousin who's engaged to be married.
Maybe it was because he touched the statue.
Maybe he
Maybe
touched
it
too many
rubbed off
times.
on him.
I like that a lot. Hella 90s for your episode.
Probably also 0.
Theme of Valentine's Day. I would say very high.
Valentine's high. Valentine's tie?
I'll give it a tie on the theme. Lesson learned. Bring a gun. In this episode, being season 1, episode 3, our heroes are very green, and it was foolish for Ryan to go after a guy who had an axe empty-handed. But as you watch the show, as the seasons progress, every episode ends with the person with the cursed object usually dying. But at the point that Ryan and Mickey have them cornered, this person has like killed, they will kill again, they're desperate, they are armed with a dangerous occult weapon, so they probably should have guns to shoot these people. However, I don't know what they would do when the police came, because they're like, he has a Victorian party favor, and they're like, yeah? Well, and you brought a gun?
Lesson learned for Pete and Pete, I would say the obvious lesson is tell the truth and perhaps treat your friends well.
But also, don't keep a squid in a bucket.
Definitely would have frozen solid on Valentine's Day.
So, tail of the tape, my episode crushes it on almost every rating. Now, I have some history and folklore of St. Valentine's Day for you.
I would expect nothing less.
Have you heard of Lupercalia?
Yes, I have heard of Lupercalia.
What have you heard?
I've heard the word Lupercalia.
There's a joke that has been circulating on the internet for quite some time that St. Valentine's Day is really horny werewolf day. I don't know if that's really justified, but I'll tell you the short version is that the Lupercalia festival was held by the Romans in honor of the city's mythological founders Romulus and Remus, who were raised by a she-wolf. During Lupercalia, priests sacrificed goats and dogs and then made whips from their hide. The Greek historian Plutarch wrote, "Many of the noble youths and of the magistrates run up and down through the city naked for sport and laughter, striking those they meet with shaggy thongs. And many women of rank also purposely get in their way, and like children at school present their hands to be struck, believing that the pregnant will thus be helped in delivery and the barren to pregnancy." So Lupercalia was not just to purify and honor and renew the city of Rome, it was also a festival of fertility. Eagle-eared listeners might recognize those same themes of bestial fertility rituals running around whipping women from all of the Krampus run style traditions that we see throughout Europe. And of course, we associate those things with the winter, but really astronomically, by the time the solstice comes around, we're already starting to shift back towards spring. And so it's important that you have all these Krampus festivals to run around to try to increase fertility, to try to wake up the land, to shake off winter and start producing and increasing fecundity and the like.
They're all about the same thing.
Lupercalia was held in the middle of February, which was eventually displaced by St. Valentine's Day.
After St. Valentine chased all the snakes out of Ireland. Got it.
That's wrong saint.
He would have.
No, St. Patrick chased the snakes out of Ireland. St. Valentine's Day ran around and whipped people with thongs.
Did he whip them with thongs made of snakes?
There's no one in history that says he didn't. We've got a co-Santa alert.
St. Valentine?
So this is a pseudo-Santa, a gift-giver figure. According to the folklore of Norfolk, in the east of England, Valentine's Day was once as important as Christmas. Since Victorian times, houses have been visited on Valentine's Eve by a character called Jack Valentine, who would knock on the back door and leave sweets and presents for children. If kids were lucky, they'd get Jack, or Old Father Valentine, or Old Mother Valentine. If they were unlucky, they'd get a knock from Snatch Valentine. A greedy child might open the door and lunge for their gift, only to have it yanked out of reach on a string. Kids were warned not to follow the present. If kids managed to capture the present, it might be full of coal, but it might also be full of jammy biscuits. So I'm not sure what the message here is, because you think it's obvious to tell kids don't get lured out of the house by strangers with gifts. But also part of the fun was trying to finally find out where the string was and tackle the package and tear it apart. Sometimes these presents left on the back door were part of this prank tradition of Snatch Valentine. There might be a huge present that you take inside and then you tear away layers and layers of paper, only to realize that it's just a bunch of boxes within boxes, and the boxes are empty. Or worse, there's a cruel comment on a note inside the box. So it's a huge present, you tear it apart, you spend minutes tearing it apart, and then there's just a note inside. This is you suck. Other pranks include using chalk to draw a fake card on the step and then watching the homeowner try to pick it up. I like that. It's very Looney Tunes coded. People would leave dead herrings. They might lean a broom or bucket of water against the door before knocking, so it would fall into the house. Then, taken to its ultimate extreme, there were these things called vinegar valentines. These were really cruel and distasteful notes and caricatures that people would send to people that had insulting poems and just nasty comments inside to people they hated. And to add insult to injury, up until the 1840s, the receiver had to pay the postage. So you pay your bill and you get this note and they turn it over and it's a caricature of you, and it's you suck, you're ugly, you smell, everyone hates you.
Still better than getting no Valentine.
Don't worry, Ryan, your vinegar Valentine is in the mail. I am in hog heaven looking up all this great Lupercalia lore.
But it's all for naught because you missed your chance to say Norfolk lore.
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day. Watch out for Snatch Valentine.
To this day, whenever I ride my bike in the rain, I think of Butt Stripe.